Hey there, welcome conscious fashion friends to Inside Fashion Design's weekly community conversations. This is where you can meet and greet with a fashion industry pro. This is your opportunity not only to hear from the experts and their knowledge and advice, but also to connect with them directly to grow your network and use their learnings to level up and empower you in your own career. For 30 minutes each week, we will have a quick chat, the perfect morning break where you will walk away with some good nuggets of advice, tips and tricks, and two of my all-time favorite things, inspiration and community connection. I love building connections because it strengthens our support system. You grow your community and you grow your support, and we can all succeed together. I am continuously finding amazing people through LinkedIn and referrals, and 99.9% of the time, these folks also love to connect, share their experiences and stories, offer advice, and even more recommendations and suggestions. That's why each week you will find us here chatting with a fashion industry pro. So hop on in, join the conversation, say hello, ask a question, share your own tips, stories, favorite resources, or own piece of advice. Follow me on LinkedIn so you don't miss out. Every single week, we'll be chatting with a fashion industry pro. Are you a fashion industry pro and you want to share your story? Message me and let's talk. Who knows, you could be our next featured guest. Thanks for joining us today. Now, let's dive into today's session. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to Inside Fashion Design's community conversation. I am very excited for today's guest. I'm excited about all our guests, I have to say. One thing that's been really exciting for me as an fashion industry vet is the community and the connections that I've built over the years. And I find myself having these conversations with amazing folks all the time. I'm always getting introduced to someone, meeting someone new, chatting with them. And when I found Kamilah and reached out to her, same thing happened. We started these conversations, and I just felt like these are such great conversations for other people to hear. It's connection, first of all, to someone in the industry that has tons of experience. And like I said in the video, 99% of the time, these folks are willing to connect with you and to chat and to share their wisdom. So that's what we're doing with these community conversations. So welcome, and I would love to hear where people are coming in from. And also, I would like to know, if you are in the industry, what is your role? You certainly don't need to be in the industry to be watching today. And if you have a challenge or a pain point, perhaps, that you're struggling with your job or with your business, share that as well. And we will try to look at those and discuss those and see how we can provide some insight, inspiration, and value to you here today. So we want this to be valuable for you. We know it's your time and you're taking a break. Hopefully it's 30 minutes. It's a quick one, but we want you to walk away with some great positivity. I guess I feel like probably many of you that the industry feels very heavy and difficult, and all of the impact, the environmental impact, the social impacts that it has on the world is daunting. So we want this to be a space where we can learn from our guests and other industry folks. What can we do to make it positive? How can we make a positive impact, socially, environmentally, and even personally, to feel hope and feel positive about what you're doing? And what can you do in your own world to make baby steps towards positive, whether you have your own business or you're a student or you're working corporately? What are those little steps that you can take along the way to strive and make progress, I guess, towards those improvements? So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Kamilah. So I also have to say before I pass it over to her that we are launching Conscious Fashion Design Academy online masterclass this fall, which will share a full cycle and process of the design and development process from both a business standpoint and a creative side. And Kamilah happens to be our very first educator that will kick off the whole thing. And her session is called Understanding the Fashion Industry and Its Impact. And that is why we are here today. So, without me rambling on even further, Kamilah, welcome. And let's just start with you sharing a little bit about your background because you are. I even had to write it down. The things that you do. I'm just going to read this. Um, Kamilah builds community support system, connecting others who can share in our journey, working towards a more sustainable, ethical, and making social impact. And it goes much further than that on your LinkedIn bio. Very impressive. You do tons of work in this space. So I'll pass it to you to share a little bit about your background and some of the work you do, and just introduce yourself to others here.
Sure. So, Kamilah Sanders, basically, I run a global think tank. It's called Greater Than Equal, and we do capacity building for social impact organizations and creatives. And we do a lot of consulting work on strategy for social impact. And we work you'll see I work kind of at the intersection of sustainability and technology, of course, creatives and fashion. Um, and basically, I also I have a fashion tech startup that we're working on this year. And so my background is in marketing, 20 plus years. And I've worked for smaller organizations, larger organizations, and really in 2019, I started my own consulting business and started to formulate that think tank. And the interesting thing about when you're an entrepreneur is that you kind of get to choose what you want to do. And I think that's why this course is so important, right? Because you are making these choices as you are a business owner and as you are designing and creating things, and you really have that power to choose and make the right decisions when you're working within this industry.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's even more important no matter what your role is. I say this all the time. Like years ago when I was working, it was like I just had my tasks and I had my deadlines and I had, my people I had to report to. And I just did what I needed to do, not thinking about all the other things that we need to think about today, like the impact or the long-term effects or, you know, who was behind things that we were using, fabrics, etc. So I think, like you said, now it's so important for awareness and to take in all those other considerations instead of just, oh, this is my job and I just need to crank out 10 styles, 20 styles or 100
Right.
styles, on by this date. So yeah, it's wonderful. And I appreciate meeting people like you who support that and make people more aware. And when they're working on it, I'm sure when you're working with a client, you go through you probably have your own process, right? Like asking all these questions of, are they considering all the impact that it makes along the way? And how do you align that?
Yeah, exactly. My first thing that I typically do or within the first conversation, and a lot of times people don't realize why that I'm doing it, is getting down to people's underlying why. Like
Mhm.
why they're doing the things that they're doing, what happened in their past or their values that really they can help to communicate what they're doing to other people and bring other people along if you understand that why.
That's
Like
yeah.
what is and a lot of people, they want to make an impact. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you find that they often aren't sure and they have to go back and kind of think about it?
Yeah, I think because it's within you, like you know what it is, but they haven't really articulated it yet. So it's about asking that series of questions to get people to understand what their underlying reason is. And then I also find with a lot of creatives is that they're what we call multi hyphenate, Like we're
Mm,
doing a little bit of everything. And at times it seems chaotic. If you ask someone else, they're like, why are you doing all these things I don't understand? But once you understand what your why is and who you are, then you can it makes sense. It's all about, how to communicate that, because you'll see that that's ingrained in everything that you
yeah.
do.
Could
Yeah.
you give us a high level overview of how you do that? Is it kind of like a series of questions? Is it a conversation with them? Because I even struggle with that myself because I am interested in so many different things and I have passions and so,
Yeah.
so it's like I go this direction. I'm like a dog watching a squirrel. It's like, that's really cool over there. I want to do that. And for me, bringing myself back to my why is um difficult sometimes.
Hmm.
Because I might feel like I have 5 reasons why or 5 purposes. So, do you have kind of any advice or process that you kinda go through that you could share?
Yeah. I mean, the way that I work, it's a conversation that we have. And you just go deeper into, what do you do? And then go deeper into why you do it. But I can give out a resource that I typically give out because, have you ever heard of Simon Sinek?
Yes, and I have his
Okay.
book, and I've done the exercise, and I love
Okay,
it. I love it,
so
yeah.
okay, so basically he has two books, Find Your Why and Start with Why. Find Your Why is where you go through those exercises. And his premise is that your why comes from yourself. It's stuff that you're pulling from your past that already happened. And basically at the end of that book, you should be able to create a draft of your personal mission statement, right? And so that personal mission statement is basically your why. Like mine is involves like connecting disparate people and amplifying the voices of marginalized populations, right? So I know that if I do that in anything that I do, then I'm going to be happy. Like I'm going to find joy in being able to do those things. Now, of course, there's lots of other things that go into that, but I think that if you're able to develop that statement, that you
Mhm.
can go back to and say, does this actually align with, because when you work in business and you're doing different tasks, there's some things that you really don't like to do,
Right,
or
right.
some people that you work with and you're like, "Oh, I don't
Ugh,
really like working with this person."
like, here
But
they come
yeah,
to my office.
right. But that's kind of like your core, that's kind of your foundation that you can go back to and say, does this actually align with me as a
Mhm.
person? And I think
Yeah.
once you set that foundation and write it down, then you can kind of, go back to that and see how it aligns.
Yeah, and that would have been very useful for me years ago, even in the job hunt phase. Like, I think I took jobs that weren't the right fit, and I did it and stayed and all that, but if I had that mission statement and I knew it didn't align with my role within that company, I probably would have gone a different direction. So,
Yeah,
it
but
it is
then
a good guiding light.
yes, but that's how you learn. I think that's the huge piece of advice that I would have for people is like take action. Because a lot of times you don't know what you like, you don't know what you want until you actually do it. And then you're like, oh, I thought I would like this. I do not like this at all, but I
Excellent
like this
point.
specific aspect of it. So there's nothing wrong with, you don't have to be perfect. If you're leaning in a certain direction, just try it out and then
Yeah,
see how you feel from there. It's a process. Like self-discovery is a process, and we grow every day. We become different. We like things that we didn't like before through
mhm.
experiences. I'm sure after this first class, you'll kind of be shifting things a little bit too.
Yeah,
So it's a process. It's not something that you wake up one day and you're like, okay, my life is perfectly aligned. Like
right.
it's learning, it's growing, and you don't know everything right away.
And I think we can zigzag, life just zigzags. Something pulls you in this direction and then you realize, "Oh, I gotta go that way," and, "Oh, no, I'm gonna go back." Yeah,
Yeah.
so when I personally look back at all my experiences and some of those that weren't, like, the greatest, it's just like you said, it's all a process, and I grew as a person, and I grew in my knowledge and experience, and you get wiser as you get older going through all those things, so yeah, to your point, if it's not the right thing or maybe you got off course, it's all part of the journey.
Yeah.
So
And I will say too, like a lot of people, a lot of times when I get on these workshops, a lot of people are like, "Oh, you seem so self-aware. Like, how did you mix all these things together?" Because now I'm like, okay, work in fashion, sustainability, technology, and I all kind of merged those things together
Yeah.
and created what I do. And I created, with my mission statement, and I created what I do, right? And the time, actually, right now is probably the perfect time for that because we're talking about artificial intelligence, but
Hmm.
where sustainability is, an urgent issue also. And I think, what happened for me is that I did look in my past and like I grew up and like kind of lived and breathed fashion. My mom was a fashion, she was a seamstress. And so
Okay.
she had like Vogue on the table. We watched, New York Fashion Week, and we would go thrifting, and she would be like, "Oh, that's not real leather," or "Oh, that's polyester," and I'm like, so now, like going into stores, I can like touch a fabric and I know what it's made out of
Yeah,
already.
that's
And
fantastic. Yeah.
it's funny because like, and I've always been into sustainability. Like when I was younger, I like wouldn't eat tuna because of tuna and like and the dolphins and
It
everything. And I
wasn't,
always
yeah,
watch these nature shows, but those things seem so disconnected. And I had dreams. I worked in retail fashion apparel for over 10 years. And so I love the industry and I love clothing. And I wanted to own my own fashion boutique or clothing line, right? But
yeah,
you know what bothered me so much about that is that I love this fashion, but we pay so much money for it. But then there's other things happening with people that don't even have clothes. And so for some reason that bothered me, right? It may not
yeah,
bother other people, but it bothered me. So I couldn't do that,
yeah,
like consciously, but I didn't know how to marry the two together. And then when I became an entrepreneur, worked in marketing and business, on the executive level, then when I became an entrepreneur, I was like, wait a minute, I can decide to do whatever I want to do.
I
Let
love
me
that.
get back to my roots of fashion and art. And so I went back and I wanted to get back into like the sustainability social impact space, joined all these organizations. So like, Remake, there's like Citizens Climate, like there's so many different organizations. Just take a deep dive into whatever you find, get involved with that community. And what I started to learn was that sustainability and fashion do go together, right?
Yeah, yep,
And of course, technology was all throughout my life. And so, now that everyone else is talking about it, I'm like, yes, we can marry all this two together. But I mean, that's kind of how I formulated what I do, is really jumping in and like just learning about it and figuring out how these two worlds meld together. And because of my mission statement and my why, this is why like teaching with this class is so important to me, because it tells the full story and about fashion, right? And it's important for people to be educated about that.
yeah. Well, speaking of the class, let's dive in and talk a little bit about the class. So we're starting in the fall, and if you're interested in learning more, you can just go to the Inside Fashion Design website, and there's a place where you can just fill out your name, and we'll send you information. We don't have the launch date yet, but it's going to be late September. And like I mentioned before, Camilla is going to be our very first session kickoff. And so let's talk about that particular class and what you'll be covering, and I guess some of the key takeaways. It is, understanding the industry and its impact. So I know you're going to talk a lot about that, and then what can the students do, to when they're moving forward in their process. Again, whether they work corporately, their own business, whether they're a designer, within their role, what are the things they can do that will make that positive impact in their own work?
Yeah, there's so much that you can do. And I know a lot of times people feel overwhelmed, but like you really do make it, like we all need each other to make an impact, whether it's small or it's a larger impact. Like there's different things that you can do. And so in the course, we'll be going through the entire fashion industry supply chain and talking about fashion's impact on the environment and social issues, because I think a lot of times One, what I've noticed is in these sustainability spaces, when you say you're like working in sustainable fashion, people are like, okay, what does that mean? Do you thrift? Like, do we
Yeah,
do
and it's
swaps?
a term that's thrown around so much now, everyone uses it for
Yeah.
everything, so you don't really know.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
so it's kind of like, okay, so you're solving the climate crisis through wearing clothes. Like
How are you doing
so
it?
people don't understand the impact that fashion has on sustainability, on the climate crisis, because it's huge, right? And the impact that it has socially. And so what we'll also explore, so if people are may or may not be familiar with the UN SDGs,
Mhm.
but there's 17.
17, yep,
Yes.
the sustainability and
Yeah.
development goals. Yeah.
Right. And so, yes, sustainable development goals. And so the thought is that if we can address these goals, then we can help to mitigate the climate crisis, right? And some of those goals are like partnerships. Some of them are ending poverty. Some of them are, of course, responsible consumption and production. That's directly related to the fashion industry. Some of them are about equity. So, and of course, like water, like the
Mhm.
climate and animals and things like that. So if you look at all those goals, what people don't realize is that the fashion industry impacts each one of those goals, right? Because if you think about the fashion industry, it's one of the number one employers of women. So we're talking about gender here. Um, and we're also talking about economics, right? Because it's a huge industry that impacts agriculture, that
Mhm.
impacts, transportation. We're talking about oil and plastic. I mean, there's just so much. It's so much in depth that you can get into with the fashion industry and understanding how it impacts things. And so I'm really excited to do it in a very organized way where people will understand along the supply chain, these are the impacts that it has. These are the different social issues that are going on. And also, and then also taking those SDGs and seeing the larger picture of how the whole system works and how it impacts other industries too.
Yeah, I think just the awareness, I'm constantly reading and looking and learning, but you still continuously find, other things that you weren't aware of before, so looking at all of that and just gaining that awareness, and it'll be an ongoing learning process. I was gonna mention that recently I mentored some high school kids who were working on, business development ideas, and
Hmm.
they had the 17 goals, and each group, they were in little groups to develop their business, like a little entrepreneurial club. So each group was assigned to pick from the goals, the 17
Uh-huh.
goals. And what I found really great was that it is overwhelming, and there's 17 of them, and they all cover different things. So for the group, we just said, "You know what? Pick 1 or 2. That's all
Uh-huh.
you have to do, pick 1 or 2." So same with your own work or your own business. If you can only focus on 1, like, that's the capacity, pick one that means the most to you and focus on that, because even just doing that one, and doing steps
Hmm.
towards that goal will make a huge difference. So, it's a lot of goals, and there's a lot of, yeah, different categories of things that they're striving for, but I really liked that when the students just picked 1 or 2, and that's what they focused on, and they built that into their business plan, so
Absolutely.
yeah, and it's the butterfly effect too. I always go back to that where, that baby step, it's like the butterfly flaps its wings and it's felt on the other side of the world, because it affects so many different things along the way, and
Hmm.
it could be that farmer, or it could be a child, or, so, even though
Yeah.
it feels overwhelming and daunting, and like you may not be even seeing that you're making a difference, if you are moving in that direction, you are, whether you
Right.
see it or not, so
And it definitely takes all of us in all different areas. So I mean, that's going to be an important thing that we talk about is what specifically you can do in your specific area to impact what's going on.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we're really excited about the class, and I think this will be a great kickoff. We talked about the why. So I believe our second session of the course is defining
Mhm.
your why. So within the course, we are building that foundation. It's not
Mhm.
just a design process. Okay, here's, you design, you get inspired, you look at trends, you decide how many styles, you make a line plan. We're going to really build a foundation that does make an impact socially, environmentally, and how do you do that? So part of that is really defining your why, understanding the industry like you're talking about and the impact and
Mhm.
how every decision you make is going to affect something down the road. So we're really excited for the class and to have you on board. And so we look forward to that. And so I had just some of the key takeaways that students will get from the course. And I'll just call them out just so you can understand it a little bit more. So the each session is 90 minutes with the educator, and then we'll have it's going to be interactive, hands-on. We want to connect with people. We want this to be live interaction where we're together in a room and supporting each other. So we're looking forward to that, and really you can connect with we want to connect and build that community too, so you can always go back and ask the person more questions or reach out to someone else that was a student and just pick their brain, compare how they're doing things, just having that conversation and having people join in the conversation so that we can all make a difference. So some of the key takeaways for the class are, like we mentioned, exploring the environmental and social impact, so just getting an
Mhm.
understanding of that, the current state and the challenges that we are facing, potential for change, like what are those opportunities and how can we make a difference? And also, we're going to talk about what is conscious fashion design. That's our theme of the whole course, and thinking of everything within the process consciously and through that lens, through your why, goes back to your why again. And how do you navigate with purpose, making informed decisions, and contributing to positive change? So that's the goal of what we're all here to do. And I think we can do it together. And the educators that we have coming in, we're really excited about, and we'll be sharing more information on that. So we have just 3 minutes left.
Yeah.
Camilla, do you have any? You mentioned a couple resources before, like organizations. Do you have any suggestions on where people could go or favorites that you would recommend now that they could just, visit the website, read, join, anything like that?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to Remake,
Mm,
which, if you don't know the organization, it's called Remake. And the thing that I love, it's an advocacy organization. But the thing that I love about them is that I don't think enough people talk about the social issues that happen with the fashion industry and
mm,
talk about, who makes our clothes, right?
yeah.
And so if you go on their website, they actually have documentaries that they created, because I think it's so important to hear from actual people that are making our clothes, and
Mhm.
people in the industries, people that are working in factories, right? And to hear their stories. And I think that that's so impactful. And so that is definitely an organization, a website. I mean, they have tons of articles and other information. They even have a brand guide
Mm.
and
Love
other
that.
resources on their website. So I would definitely check them out. And I'm a huge proponent of people telling their own stories. And you'll
Yeah,
see that in the course, because I'm grateful that I have this platform to highlight people, but it's not my story, but I rather someone else or that person be able to speak for themselves, right?
yeah.
And so you'll see that in the course, I'll give some examples of, things that people have actually experienced from their own words. The other one, I don't know if you're familiar with Alden Wicker.
What is it
She
called?
Alden Wicker, she's an investigative
Oh,
journalist.
I
She
did
just
not
came out
know.
with a book recently. It's called To Die For. And if
Okay,
you
yeah,
are,
yeah.
yeah,
I've heard
if
of the
you
book.
are
I didn't recognize the name. Okay, yeah.
Okay, yes. So if you are a person that likes to research things and really wants to get down to the truth, we know that textiles are a huge thing in the fashion industry. And like I always give the example of my friends that are buying fast fashion, and they get this pleather and they're like, oh my gosh, it smells horrible. How do I get
It's
this smell
plastic.
out? And it's like, well, it's because it's literally toxic. Like you're,
Yeah.
you
Don't
know, and
breathe
so
it.
right, right. And how do we know like these are cotton, actually organic, like those type of things, like this book, it goes deep into those different topics, and she does a great job of really standing on her own and getting down to the truth. And so that's
Which
one
I'm
thing that I
sure
would recommend.
and I'm
Yes.
sure she upset some people probably by
Absolutely.
publishing that.
but
Yeah.
that's what we're here for, right? We're
Yeah.
here
Stir
to
stir
tell
it
the
up.
truth
Just
and
rub.
make good
Yep.
decisions, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Exactly.
wonderful. Well, I have heard of the book. I haven't read it, but I'm gonna grab it. And we are actually out of time, but if people have questions, does anyone have any questions or want to say hello to Kamilah? Any comments? We'd love to hear from you. And thank you for joining us. And we have a lineup of wonderful guests through August. So watch my LinkedIn page will have the calendar and the schedule. And again, you just go there to chime in, and then the videos live on there after if you miss it. But I don't think we have any questions today. But thank you, Kamilah, so much for joining us. And I so look forward to our class. Again, if you want class information, go to the website and we can send you information as it's available. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.